There we go. Okay, so let's give everyone their proper introduction. So my name is Paul. I'm the founder of TILTAL, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Nik Peachey. Nik Peachey is the Director of Pedagogy at Peachey Publications, which you can go to peacheypublications.com. That looks like this, you can see on my screen right now. This is an independent digital publishing company that specializes in the design of digital learning materials. Nik has been involved in education since 1990 as a teacher, trainer, educational consultant, and project manager. He has more than 25 years experience of working specifically with online, remote, and blended learning environments. He has worked all over the world training teachers and developing innovative and creative products. He is a two-time British Council Innovations Award winner and has been shortlisted 6 times. That's quite a resume you've got there, Nik. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Well, I've been knocking around for quite a long time, you know.
Yeah, and you're very, very active, and you're sending out emails and newsletters all the time. I've noticed, and I think you have a couple of sites that maybe I'll show briefly and you can talk about before we get started. So I think this is one of your pages here. Peachey Publications Limited. Can you tell people in the audience a little bit about this site?
That's, I mean, basically, I started producing my own material and marketing my own materials and publishing my own materials about 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe 6, 7 years ago, after winning the first my second Innovations Award for digital video. And so I started producing materials which I sell, and this is kind of like my catalogue of materials. So they're about, getting on for 100, 150 lesson plans, apps, teacher resource books, that kind of thing, which is sort of all for sale on there. Mm-hmm. And I've developed a number of free apps there, which you can see at the top there. There's one, infographics for educators, which is a sort of collection of infographics which teachers can just browse through to sort of develop their teaching knowledge. And there's the Teachers Classroom app, which is a free version of the commercial app that I've produced, and it has examples of digital lesson plans and a couple of books and things like that I've produced. So both of those are sort of downloadable for free. If anybody's interested in getting some free stuff, go along there and check those out.
That's great, Nik. Thank you. We'll dig down a little deeper into that in a moment, I think. And I want to show this one other page that people can go to as well. Let's put this link in the chat so people can visit that link if they want to. So I'll just put that in the chat right now. And the other page is this one, which is your Scoop It page, isn't it? Can you briefly introduce this page?
Yeah, it's one of 3 Scoop It pages actually. That one's that one's kind of like a portfolio site of things that I've published or work that I've done for a range of other people, including things like this webinar or interviews or stuff like that. There's also one that's called Tools for Teachers and Learners, which is one that I started a long time ago, which has I actually started it for I was teaching on an MA course, MA TESOL course at Westminster, and I started it for my TESOL students, and then it started to gather subscribers, and I ended up with something like 35,000 subscribers to each one. So,
wow.
So I just keep posting to them, and I'm still posting after I think that was about 12 years now. I've been adding things to that.
Do you have a link for that other one, Nik? Sorry, can we?
Yeah, I can post the links to that in it. Just let me.
While you're doing that, I'll just go through some housekeeping rules here, housekeeping things here. Okay, so I kind of skipped over this. I should have done this first. So just some housekeeping things. Mics are muted and videos are disabled for audience members. Chat is enabled only for sending questions to host or co-hosts. But if you do have questions for Nik or myself at any time, please feel free to pop that in the chat. Also, we'd love to know where you're from and what your teaching context is. So please go ahead and pop that in the chat if you're able to do so. This session is being recorded. I've already said that, and we could share highlights of the recording online. I intend to do that. They will be shared to the TILTAL homepage, which is tiltal.org, and also the TILTAL Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/TILTAL. Sorry, we're not doing attendance certificates for this webinar. Sorry about that, but we don't really do that. And just a quick request to remain civil and respectful at all times, and please enjoy the webinar here with Nik. And I can see that Nik is just posting some links to all the great stuff he's created over the years into the chat. So please go ahead and check those out while we're talking, if you like, or after the webinar has finished. So as you know from the title, this webinar is about idealism and realism. And this was actually inspired by a post of a post that Nik wrote and I read about Facebook's Metaverse. I think we'll come to that a little bit later, Nik, but for the time being, let's start off the conversation with talking about this question here, which is, do you think we're heading into an exciting new world of learning, or is it going to be kind of technological disillusionment of some kind? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think yes and no. I think, whether we're heading into it, I think we're already into an exciting world of learning technology. And I think, there's lots, I think if there's one good thing that's happened as a result of the pandemic, it is that more teachers are getting engaged in this sort of, in using technology with their students, maybe because they've been forced to, but, in the end, I think that is a good thing, and that we've all learned a lot from that process. Mm-hmm. I think, I had, interestingly, I had a meeting with, well, you might not find it interesting, but I had a meeting with a school director at the beginning of the pandemic, and he said to me, it feels like we've been dragged 10 years into the future. And I thought, actually, that's not true. It feels like you've been dragged 10 years into the present, because this stuff has been, knocking around for a very long time. I mean, computer-assisted language learning has been around since, the 60s, and things like Zoom and video conferencing have been around for the last 10 to 20 years. It's just that we haven't been forced to engage with them.
So you think the pandemic kind of kickstarted people into using technology in their lessons more than before? Would that be true to say that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of people were kind of forced to, who were reluctant to it, and maybe, they've learned a lot from that, and they'll take that into their physical classrooms when they go back. And I think that's a good thing. About this sort of disillusionment and excitement, I think generally a lot of people, when they first encounter sort of some new technological devices or software, get very excited about it, and maybe a little bit too excited about it. So that kind of disillusionment phase isn't such a bad thing. It's like, you have to go through this process of going, wow, yeah, I can do this, and this with it. And then suddenly you start to realize, yeah, I can't do that with it. That doesn't work. But this does, So I think, working through that process and coming to a stage where you kind of approach technology in a much more balanced way and sort of a much more aware way is a good thing. And it's a process that a lot of us have been through and still go through. So, that's not such a bad thing.
The balance is very important, I think. And I was trying to illustrate in this image that, we have this kind of idealized image of maybe VR or AR, and then we have the reality of the mask and the kind of the bored student who has Zoom fatigue and is kind of, too much screen time. And I was thinking, in general, we decided as a society that we weren't getting enough screen time, and we decided to strap the screens to our faces, which is the next stage of the internet, And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, like screen time and health implications, and students getting kind of, Zoom fatigue or, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that there's a whole bunch of stuff in that statement that we could sort of think about and unpack. I think, as a parent, I have a 7-year-old daughter. I also have one that's 23 that's grown up with technology, and I think, has a kind of quite healthy balance. But, my 7-year-old, I think particularly, is very much into her iPad and is very much into her world being there, and that takes up, for me, probably a bit too much of her time. But I think she's also developed the ability to learn a lot from that. If I sit down at a computer game and she will tell me and show me how to use it, and she will have learned that from watching videos about it, and she watches videos about different things and learns from them. She's also bilingual, although she's being brought up in Britain, and she sort of listens to videos in Spanish and keeps developing her language, so much so that my wife's Spanish has been influenced by her Spanish now, and she's picking up words. I mean, my wife's Venezuelan, so she speaks Venezuelan Spanish, and she's picking up words from Castellano or from Spanish,
Yeah.
if you like,
Does
which is
she use?
interesting.
Sorry to jump in, Nick. Does your daughter use any particular app for learning Spanish, or is it like watching YouTube, or like?
No, it's purely kind of independent study, motivationally driven. She doesn't use any apps for the language. She's mostly it's YouTube videos and things like that.
Okay.
YouTube Kids.
Okay, so the idea here is a balance and perhaps to implement some limits on screen time, especially for younger children. Do you have limits for your daughter on screen time? Do you use the Apple function where you can have an hour a day or something like that?
I don't use anything like that to sort of have specific limits on it. She has specific times of day when she can use it,
Right.
which is a bit more flexible at the weekend. And then, really I think the responsibility is on me. If I feel she's using it in too much, then it's probably because I'm not spending enough time with her, and I need to sort of do something about that myself, right? And find something for us to do together. And I think that's a nice way to balance it out. And I think there's also this sort of balance between what's useful screen time and what's not. We do a lot of things on the screen together, and I think that's spending time with your child or your students, sort of following up their interests and what they're doing on it and getting them to show you stuff is very productive time, because it isn't just screen time, it's kind of social time and learning time, and you validate that time that they're spending as well, and I think that's sort of a very good way to go with things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just want to let you know about some comments in the chat. We've got someone here joining us from Oman. We've got someone here from Singapore, the British Council. We've got someone from Melbourne, Australia, and yeah, so we've got a wide range of people here in the chat. So that's nice to know. So let's move on to, let's keep things going. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No, sure.
Yep. So let's go on to the next question. So this is what you were saying before about, I think you mentioned this before. How do we actually decide which tools are worth adopting and which ones are not worth using or actually damaging? Let's focus on language learning, I guess, because people are interested in how to learn languages. So do you have a system for deciding, which tools to adopt and which to drop?
I have some kind of basic criteria, and I think, one of the big ones is, is it something that you're going to be able to use just once, or does it have multiple uses? Because if it's just a kind of novelty gimmick thing that you're going to use just once and then never use again, then you have to be careful about how much time you put into that, especially if it requires training time. Whereas, apps that you're going to be able to use again and again, and that have multiple uses, are much more worth putting training time into.
Yeah.
And I mean, that training time is an important one. How much of your students' time are you going to spend, committing just to learning how to use it as opposed to learning how to learn language through it? It has to be something that's quickly trainable. If it's going to take them half an hour to find out how to use it, then it's probably not that useful.
Can we name and shame here? Do you think are there any apps that you've used once and then thought, oh, that wasn't worth the time taking to learn it?
In a lot of cases, I wouldn't name ones, but in a lot of cases, they're things like highly complicated LMSs or something like that can do 100 things, but students really struggle with how to sort of find their way around them or navigate them.
Yeah.
So
simple is better.
Things that have, yes, things that have a simple, intuitive design, I think, tend to be better for students.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, one of the other and probably one of the main criteria, I guess, is, are students going to be motivated by this? Are they interested in what it has to offer? Because, the first and foremost thing really is, student motivation. And if it doesn't motivate them, through the content or through or what they feel they can learn from it, then you're wasting your time, however good you think the app is.
That's a really good point. Now, I was talking to a colleague of mine the other day, and I asked him, does shadowing work as an activity? Like, does it actually inherently, fundamentally work in terms of producing language gains to proficiency? And he just said it works if the students are motivated to do it. So it's like before you look at impact studies, you should look at studies of motivation, because if students don't do it at all, the impact is going to be zero. No matter what the study says. So is that kind of what you're saying there?
Yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell, really. They have to want to do it, or you're wasting your time. And often that depends less on the technology than it does on the content that's driving the interaction. Whether you're choosing content that they're interested in, as opposed to something from the book or something you want them to learn or something like that.
Can you give an example of something that your students or you have found particularly motivational in recent years?
I mean, I think a good example of an app that's motivating for students is lyricstraining.com.
Okay, let's bring that up. Yeah.
That's kind of got a whole bunch of music videos in that students can listen to, and then while they're listening to it, they reassemble the lyrics from it. That's something that a lot of students find quite motivating, because they enjoy listening to music. They can listen multiple times, and and it's a very nicely designed sort of gamified app as well. So it gets them to it scores them. They're getting instant feedback and things like that.
Okay, so this is lyrics training right here, isn't it? I think there's an app version for the iPhone and one for the Android. This is the web browser based version, so it's free to use, and students sign up and they just start studying straight away.
Yeah, that's right. The app version is actually much better than the web based version, but it still works. It still works very well, and I think that's something a lot of students, a lot of students who you speak to who've reached a good language level have done so because they're interested in the language culture, and this is part of the culture that they can follow up with. And how many people learn English through listening to the Beatles? Loads.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And the Beatles have a very good corpus of different phrases, and it's quite easy to listen to, and it's like you can hear what they're trying to say. Whereas with modern rap music, it's a struggle to understand what they're actually saying a lot of the time, isn't it? Kind of easy listening in a way, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so lyrics training. So we should adopt tools that are motivational as a kind of priority. But what if a tool is motivational but doesn't really have any pedagogical value? Have you ever found a tool like that?
I suspect that students see through that kind of thing quite quickly. I mean, to some extent, it also depends on how you use it. But I can remember in the early days of blogging, teachers would think, yeah, today I'm going to teach my students, I'm going to get my students to write a blog, and think that just because it was technology, it would be motivating in itself. We'll go to the computer room and do some stuff on the computers, and just because it was a computer, it would be motivating on itself. And that kind of doesn't work, especially nowadays when most students have got I say most students, and many students have sort of reasonably high quality phones, probably better than their teachers in a lot of cases. And just going to the computer room or just using an app isn't enough to kind of drive motivation. And I think that's important to be aware of.
Okay. Let's keep things rolling. Let's go on to the next question. So this is an interesting question. So in terms of CALL or TEL, Technology Enhanced Language Learning, how much time do you think we should spend interacting with a computer compared to interacting with humans through a computer? So I think this is a very important distinction, because we can learn things like Duolingo, where you are interacting with a computer primarily, although Duolingo does have some forums as well. Or you could use like a Zoom, like synchronous technologies, to interact with other people through a computer. So which of these is more important, and how do you get the right balance there, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is important to get balance, and and there is a balance to be got. I mean, in terms of how much, the more time you put into something, the more you're going to learn. So as much as possible as both is, the easy answer. But, in terms of how we use them, I think of it as being sort of, fluency practice as opposed to accuracy practice.
Yeah.
Computers are very good at measuring accuracy. If you can tell them what the right answer is, they can, you can speak to them, you can read something, you can do listening activities, you can manipulate form, and as long as the computer knows what the right answer is at the end of it, it can give you feedback on that.
Yeah.
So you can do a lot of work on accuracy, on listening skills, to some extent speaking skills. Speaking skills, even reading and writing skills these days, and you can get feedback. Where computers have more of a problem is fluency, when you're producing language spontaneously, which they can't predict. And that's where you really need to sort of be interacting with other people and communicating genuinely. Where it also, you need to be experience unpredictable input as well. So that when someone's saying something to you, you have to sort of spontaneously come up with a reply. So, where you have to be fluent, I think it can really help.
Do you have any recommendations for apps that enable this kind of interacting through a computer with other humans? I mean, obviously Zoom, we're using Zoom now, and Zoom has become the kind of de facto app for delivering distance lessons during the pandemic and afterwards as well. I'm wondering if there's any other apps that you've used that enable this interaction, through the network with other human beings.
I mean, one of the things that I use to design my own materials, and which I embed in my own materials, is H5P, which is an open source technology, which if you look at the examples and downloads at the top, if you go back up to the top of the screen and go to examples and downloads, at the top menu, examples and downloads, you'll see that there's a whole range of different interactions there that you can design for, for different kinds of language games and language-based activities. And this is what I use when I design activities to sort of embed into my own materials. But, this is great if you've got a WordPress site or a Moodle site, because you can use it for free. I actually pay for a subscription for it so that I can embed it into my materials. But, it has lots of different interaction types, which include, voice recognition and evaluating voice, voice recording, some sort of structured writing and things like that. But that's all, your accuracy stuff, really. I mean, the app that the range of apps and tools that you've developed, I think are very useful too for all those kinds of things.
We can talk about that a little bit, actually, now that you mentioned it.
I mean, you have a similar suite of things which works in a similar way, so. Yeah,
this is our app, this is Ngenga, and we have 10 assignment types: audio recording, multiple choice, speaking drill, etc., things like that, yeah? And I've also worked with another guy, Oliver Rose, I think, who's in the chats, and he's developed a suite of apps called Lingo Lab. And this basically allows students to play like bingo games with each other online. They can play with each other, or they can play by themselves. So this is all really good stuff as well for interacting with the computer, I guess. Also interacting with other people through a computer, as it allows you to have a live connection to other people. So these kind of live games, do you like these, like Kahoot and Quizlet Live and this one Lingo Lab? What do you think about these live games? Do you like them?
Yeah, I think they're nice things to do in the classroom. And I think there's a lot of them are much more interesting than what we used to give, in terms of, we used to have the workbook where, students did their kind of accuracy-based sort of text manipulation and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think, there's definitely a place for them in sort of developing accuracy and, having games in the classroom and things like that. I think that's very good. I think a lot of teachers, when they first get into technology, though, have a tendency to start overusing a lot of these things.
Yeah.
particularly things like Kahoot and Quizlet, and think, oh, well, it's fun, it's a game, I'll do this. And, and I think that there is a danger of overusing them and forgetting that, a lot of that stuff is really useful to do, at home on your own for homework. But the classroom, and whether it's this kind of virtual classroom or a physical classroom, is students' real opportunity to interact with other people. And, we need to keep a balance between that as well.
So just going back to apps for enabling this interaction with other people, like fluency practice. Zoom is like the de facto solution. Do you think Zoom is really the best solution for that, or other kind of more niche solutions?
I think Zoom is a good solution for that. I really like Telegram. I think is a great solution because it's it's free. It's very low on. It can manage on very low connectivity, and it doesn't have any time limits or any limits on how many people you can broadcast to. It's also very flexible. You can use it to build a blended learning course or have group interaction and things like that. So I think, I'm really into Telegram at the moment, and I think that's a sort of really powerful tool as well.
I never thought of using Telegram to teach anything. I thought it was basically like an app for exchanging encrypted messages with people that you want to keep a secret,
It started out as a messaging app, but they've built all these other remarkable abilities on top of it. So now you can do a webinar on it, or you can have a group lesson with up to 30 people sharing their screen or their video, and you can record it, and it can do all these things for free. You can set up a channel where you feed in materials. I've built my own sort of EdTech and ELT channel where I share sort of materials to subscribers there, and you can build communities of practice on it.
Do you have a link for that?
I can probably find one. Let's see if I can grab my.
Okay.
I'll just grab my link for the EdTech and ELT channel. I'll put this into the.
Is this can people subscribe to this for free, or do they have to pay? Or
yeah, it's free to subscribe to. All you need to do is have Telegram. I've just put it in there now. All you need to do is have Telegram, and it will open. You can preview it if you click on Preview Channel below. And it's very nice because you can sort of feed in content, but you can also feed in these little 1-minute video clips to talk about the content. So it builds up a kind of level of personalization that, if I had to type all that verbal stuff in, I probably wouldn't have time to do it. But I can easily sit in front of my camera for 1 minute and just chat about, what I'm sharing. There's a link to our webinar there that we're doing now,
Right.
And I can give a little introduction to it. So it's much more personal,
Yeah, it's kind of looks a little bit like Facebook, maybe like a Facebook group, maybe a similar kind of function to a Facebook group, perhaps.
You can do that with it. You can sort of create groups on it. This is a channel. So in a channel, users can only respond to what I put into it. So they can like it or add an emoji to it. They can't sort of comment on it. You can link a group to a channel, and then you can sort of add comments to it as well. Or you can have a group which enables everyone to post whatever content they want to it. But I love these lot of 1-minute video clips that you just sort of chat and talk into the computer or into the phone with,
Right.
I find it's really powerful medium.
And could students reply? So some teachers that I know, they use Flipgrid to get students to reply to video prompts. Is that possible through Telegram as well?
Yeah, that's possible through Telegram as well. If you create a group and you make it a group, then everybody has the same communication tools, Okay. And or you can limit, as an admin, you can sort of also limit which communication tools they have access to as well. So that's quite useful.
Awesome. Okay, let's keep things moving on. So question number 4 right now. So what are the best 5 language teaching or learning apps you have encountered in the last 5 years? So 5 for 5. Here we go.
That's always a difficult one to answer because what's best for me might not be best for you, and I tend to do kind of a lot less language teaching as opposed to teacher training these days. For me, my 5 most that I use most, I guess, is I'm using Telegram a lot at the moment for doing training and putting various things out there. I also use H5P, as I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
I'm using Genially a lot to create materials and lesson materials. that will work in this kind of online environment. I think.
Oh, two L's. Sorry, I made a mistake there, didn't I?
Yeah.
This one?
Genially is a really powerful tool, and that's what I build most of my classroom materials for. I'm using another thing called Glide Apps, which I use to build the apps that I sort of build the materials into. I can share the link with
that called, sorry?
to that. Glide app. I'll put that into the chat for you.
This one?
Could be, yeah, that's it, Glide app. So that's a no-code tool for building apps. I'm building apps for teachers and apps for students, so students can have a student workbook, which is basically on their phone, And I think that's very useful.
So this Glide allows you to convert a spreadsheet into an app, basically. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, basically you build all your content into a spreadsheet, and then you connect it to Glide, which creates an interface for it, and then you can sort of design the interface. So it's a very powerful tool, and then students can download the apps onto their phone and connect through their phone, and they don't need to go through the App Store or through Google Play. They just download a link to it. So what it's doing is putting an interface on top of your spreadsheet, and so they're accessing your spreadsheet through this, what looks like an app style interface.
I see. Okay, so I think we've got 4 there. Do you have one more you could give us? Telegram, H5P, ELE, Glide, one more?
One more. I guess, social media generally, things like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, the kind of holy trinity of social media, if you like. And that's basically for my own development, because, it puts me in touch with my community, and I learn so much from being in touch with other teachers there, like yourself, or, or going through Facebook groups, or looking on LinkedIn. I think is sort of probably one of the most useful, because you cut out the fluffy kittens and things like that, and get straight to people who are sharing stuff, whether it's commercial or non-commercial. And that professional network, I think, is really very important.
There are a few fluffy kittens on LinkedIn, but there's also like these kind of memes that go around, like I think they're kind of half true or maybe completely false memes. So I think LinkedIn is vulnerable to fake news in the same way that Facebook is vulnerable to fake news, but maybe not quite as bad. But it does get there. Okay,
it's kind of professionally focused fake news, I guess, if you like, which is
different marks, different kind of target users. Okay, so let's go on to question 5 now. So this is kind of a question I pretty much ask everyone, because as teachers, we're a little bit worried about our job security. Obviously with the pandemic, that's hit a lot of teachers hard anyway, and then we have AI. So AI, is it more of a threat or more of an opportunity for language teachers? Any thoughts on that?
I think, like most technologies, it's a threat if you don't get to grips with it and don't understand it. It's an opportunity if you do get to grips with it and you do try and understand it and understand how you can use it. There's a lot of potential there for kind of analyzing data and understanding how students learn, which is very important and hard to do sort of manually. So an AI can sort of sift through your data and come up with possible conclusions for you.
Yeah.
It can take a lot of the workload from you as well. There are AI chatbots now which can very easily answer a whole bunch of grammar questions and with very, very consistently good answers. So there's value in that. They've been used a lot in online courses to answer, to take a lot of the workload off teachers for sort of basic stuff. So I think that's quite good. They're very useful for just to give students practice at chatting, AI chatbots, so that they can have a conversation with the chatbot. And in some cases that students don't even realize that it's a chatbot. And in some cases they can actually get better conversations from a chatbot than they can from a human, because
that's quite sad, isn't it?
Well, a chatbot has no ego and has no self-consciousness, so you can ask it pretty much anything and it will give you an answer. Whereas most humans sort of are kind of have filtering devices where they might not want to answer some things, or they might lie to you. You know, chatbots basically tell you the truth. You know, they tell you what they think.
I guess humans also have the effective filter too, right? So they might lose confidence or motivation. But you know, chatbots can lie, because I've done quite a bit of work with AI actually, and there's an app called OpenAI. I'm not sure if you've seen that one or heard of it. OpenAI, yeah. This is the one that uses the GPT-3 model, which is like the latest language model, and yeah, it can lie, and you can tell it, you know, please give me, you know, 2 truths and 1 lie, and it can do that, and you know, it does tend to lie occasionally, but
it lies if you ask it to,
yeah.
And it lies if it's programmed to.
Yeah.
You know, which is the other thing to be aware of. But you know, for the average conversation, it will answer your questions. I mean, if you're looking for sort of facts and things like that, then the fact that it can be programmed to lie is sort of a little bit more worrying, and you know, something that you have to be more suspicious of. You know, I guess, but. I mean, the other, you know, I guess the other great worry with AI, especially, you know, what some of the ways it's being used in education is it can be discriminatory. You know, it can discriminate against different people. You know, it can discriminate on race and make decisions based on race. You know, if the person programming it is prejudiced, then they can program in their prejudices to it. No, it kind of worries me too. This thing in China where they're introducing cameras which try to recognize how engaged you are through AI. So they're sort of analyzing whether you're really engaged with the lesson, which could be a good thing, because it could tell the teacher something about this person isn't being engaged, I need to do better. Or it could be a bad thing in that, you know, it makes a judgment about you based on the fact that you're not engaged, and so, you know, moves you to a lower level or something like that. You know, I think that's kind of one of the dangerous sides.
Speaking about chatbots, there was this article that was released recently. This Google engineer who claimed that Google had developed a sentient chatbot. Did you see this at all on your?
I did see that. Yeah.
And this is the kind of conversation that he was having. You know, he was saying, you know, we are engineers at Google. We want to work on a project with you, and this is the chatbot, right? So, wow, what types of projects? It's a project about you. Awesome. What kind of stuff? So it's like it's so naturalistic language, and kind of you know, the responses are completely appropriate and suitable. And yeah, you guys can read the whole conversation. It's very, very surprising, you know, how realistic it is. You know. I had a question from Raquel in the audience. She says, going back to like the likes of SNS and LinkedIn, she says, LinkedIn, there's a growing interest with ELT teachers to use LinkedIn as a professional window to showcase our work. Do you think that's true about LinkedIn there?
That is, and I think, you know, that's a good thing. You know, I think teachers need a showcase for their work. You know, lots of teachers are doing great things, and you know, originally LinkedIn was designed as a place to find work and to present your CV. So you know, if you're presenting your professional work there, then you know, that's a good thing. That's what it's about. You know, and you know, you don't have, one of the great things on LinkedIn is you don't have those, you know, prejudice against, you know, showing work that you've done that's commercial, which, you know, a lot of things like Facebook groups do. You know, there's often, you know, when I've posted things which are commercial, you know, people have kind of shamed me for it, and you know, as this, you know, I should only be sharing things that are free. You know, how dare I share something that's commercial?
Happens a lot. That happens a lot.
We all have to eat. You know, we all go to work. We all take a salary, unless you're, you know, independently rich. You're already, you know, what we do is commercial. It is a product. You know, and there's no reason why, you know, people, teachers included, shouldn't make money from their work. You know, it's just, you know, it's a fact of life.
I agree with that. So just to close the circle on this question 5 here, do you think it's more of a threat or more of an opportunity, that AI, do you think, for language teachers?
Like I say, I think it comes down to how much you engage with it. I think, you know, I think there are huge opportunities there. There's huge potential there, but in the end, it comes down to who takes control of that and what their motivation is. You know, if we're willing to engage with it, just like technology, we can do a lot with it, and it can empower us a lot. But if you're not, you know, then you'll be controlled by it.
You mentioned, I think you mentioned that maybe you had used some chatbots with your students. I'm just wondering which particular chatbots you use. Do you have any recommendations for chatbots?
I don't have recommendations for chatbots actually. When I used chatbots with my students, it was a very long time ago. It was, let's see, it must be, I mean, almost must be getting on for 20 years ago now. I was still teaching in Morocco at the time, and it was just after the film AI by Steven Spielberg came out.
Okay, it was a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, and at the time they had a website to promote the film, and it had a chatbot on it. And I tried out this chatbot, and it was able to give really good answers. So you could go and chat to this. So I got my students going to the AI site and sort of chatting with it. It was a group of kind of youngish learners. They're about 10, 11, 12. So it was very safe for them to go to that. I knew they weren't going to go into a chat room and meet, God knows who. So it was a very, very safe way to get them to practice language and to practice chatting with someone. And like I said before, it gave them an answer, and that was really useful. And I think,
Okay. So there aren't any, like, I don't know of any language learning specific chatbots. Like, I was approached by a company actually a few months ago, and they wanted to work with me to create a chatbot for language learners, but in the end they didn't have the time to go through the project. But I think this is kind of been thought about a few times by different people. If we can create a language learning chatbot, we could maybe push it out into the ELT market. But there isn't one that I know of that's available right now.
No, there's probably something knocking about if you look hard enough, or somebody trying to do it. But I think there is huge potential there.
What would a language teaching chatbot be able to do that a general purpose chatbot couldn't do? Like, would it teach you word meanings, or would it restrict its vocabulary to basic vocabulary or basic grammar, that kind of thing, do you think?
It would be quite easy to have a language chatbot that actually corrected your grammar, so it could sort of analyze whether you were doing something correctly, and then identify your mistakes and maybe give you some input on how to correct your grammar and what you were doing wrong. Something like that would be reasonably easy to sort of program into an AI chatbot, I would have thought.
It would say, like, you said, I like to go to shopping. Did you mean you like to go shopping? That's often a mistake the Japanese learners of English make, but it could focus on those typical mistakes, couldn't it?
Yeah, and it could actually give an explanation as to why that's wrong as well. I think there was an app quite recently that won one of the Innovations Awards that did a similar thing, only it was human controlled. So and it linked into Facebook, so it was like linked into Facebook Messenger, and you could sort of write something to it, and then it would sort of correct it and send it back to you with an explanation. But at the time they were relying on people to do it, and that isn't a scalable model, because if you get 2,000 people sending in messages every minute, you need gazillions of teachers there able to answer it and give you students feedback. But AI can do that because AI is scalable. It's infinitely scalable.
Yeah. We have a question from Meg in the chat relating to AI. She says, what is your view on the use of ASR, which I think is automatic speech recognition, for pronunciation, intelligibility, etc.? I have a few thoughts on that, but I'd like to pass it over to you initially to see what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I use a few of these activities in my own work. I have a kind of H5P has an activity type where you can sort of program in specific sentences, get students to say them, and it will recognize them and whether they're correct and give them some feedback. It's not brilliant, but it's a way of getting students to do controlled practice, if you like. The downsides of it are that it's comparing to a model. So it depends on what model it's comparing to. Like when I designed the activity, I have to select a model, whether it's a British accent, American accent, or something like that. So there's a kind of language accent bias there, but it is a way that you can kind of give students some speaking practice. And I think that that is valuable, so they can sort of attempt to match a model. And I think that has some value.
Yeah, so that's there's two types of ASR that I'm aware of. One is accent reduction for the purposes of accent reduction, and one is intelligibility remediation. So the purpose of the first is to make you sound more like a native speaker, either American or British or Australian or whatever. Normally American, because American is the standard accent in the world, TEFL, de facto. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it just kind of got that status by being in the right place at the right time, I guess. And the other is intelligibility remediation, which allows you to speak in a more comprehensible way, not necessarily reducing your own accent, but at least reducing it to the extent that it becomes more comprehensible to other people. And your goal is not to speak like an American, but just to speak in a comprehensible way. Yeah. So out of those two, accent reduction, intelligibility remediation, which do you think would be the best approach there, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think to some extent it depends on your students. I think intelligibility generally is the best, but there might be specific students who want to go to, if you're emigrating to a specific country, you might want to sound more like you're a speaker from that country, because, that will help you, that may well help you to integrate. Good, whether that's right or wrong, that's a fact.
It's an individual choice, isn't it, really? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you might decide that actually, I want to sound British, or I want to sound Canadian, because, I want, it's going to make it easier for me to get a job. It's going to make, I'll have less problems over the phone, things like that.
I think
it really depends on student needs.
Okay, so I'll just briefly introduce a couple of apps here. Elsa is one example that is more of a kind of accent reduction, but it will also help with intelligibility remediation. So this is the one that's kind of going viral now around the world, and there's an app for it, and there's a web. I think there's a web version coming in the near future. So I actually interviewed the guy behind Elsa. If you go to tiltal.org, you'll find that interview if you're interested in watching that. Tiltal.org. There's an interview with Xavier, who is the guy who invented the kind of the AI system behind Elsa. Also here in Japan, a very popular one is called English Central. They have this kind of watch, learn, speak system where you watch a video and then you learn the words in the video and then you speak the lines from the video. This is the kind of industry leader here in Japan right now. And we also do this with Zengengo as well. If you go to zengengo.com and go to demo and then go to speaking drill, you'll be able to try out. And this is kind of more, I'd say, intelligibility remediation. We don't penalize foreign accents in a very strong way. It's more just kind of, can you pronounce it in a generally comprehensible way? So yeah. Okay, so hopefully that answered Meg's question there. Okay, let's go on to the next question, number 6. So this is looking a little bit toward the future, although it's already started. And I think this is where there's a lot of hype surrounding this concept, Nick. So I hope you can clear up some of this hype. So what is the metaverse and how will it help language teachers and learners?
Well, I mean, the metaverse, as it is being promoted at the moment, is, this ability to sort of drop yourself into a 3-dimensional virtual world that looks like reality and move between, different, have a presence across different technologies with your kind of personal profile, your personal avatar, if you like. I mean, there are lots of 3D virtual environments where you can drop yourself in, you can put on some virtual reality goggles, drop yourself into that environment. But these aren't all connected to each other. And I think the idea with the metaverse is that these connect so that you can be the same virtual person on Facebook as you are in decentralized land or in any number of other places. So the web turns into a 3D place that you integrate yourself with, and you can move between Facebook or LinkedIn, and you're still your 3D virtual presence, if you like.
So this is Decentraland. Have you used this yourself? Have you used it with students?
I haven't used it with students, but I've used it a little bit myself.
And does this work with or without a AR headset? Do you know?
Yeah, that will work without a headset. You can just sort of drop into it and use your browser if you want to.
So I think last time I tried this, it basically tried to make me sign up for Bitcoin or something like that, and I was like, why do I have to create a Bitcoin account to use it? But I think it's all kind of linked in, isn't it? They're saying your present virtual, the economy is virtual, and therefore you need to have this kind of not Bitcoin, but like cryptocurrency.
Virtual,
right. Is that right? Do
Yeah.
you think?
I mean, I don't think you have to use it, but things like cryptocurrencies and and blockchain are aspects of the metaverse.
Yeah.
Because they are aspects that will enable you to move to one environment to the other and prove and maintain your identity. And because the internet is very much a commercial place these days, to have currency that's a universal currency across those different platforms, so that you can go to the bank and use the bank in the same currency that you use on Facebook and the same currency that you use in Decentraland or Second Life or any other sort of virtual platform.
So the idea with the Decentraland or any of these other kind of metaverse-enabled apps is bringing it back to language teaching. I mean, is there anything that these apps can bring to the language learning process that couldn't be done face-to-face? I mean, obviously you can connect with students the other side of the world. Is that the main advantage of these kind of apps, do you think?
In terms of language learning, yeah, I think one of the advantages is, yes, you can communicate and connect with people all over the world. The other one is that you can sort of build simulated experiences in them, so that you can sort of, you can have that experience of going into a shop and buying something virtually in, your target language country that you wouldn't be able to do in your own country. So you can sort of build experiential learning into them, in the same in that way. And I think that's a big advantage, that you can sort of make mistakes and try to have your driving lesson in English if you like and see what happens, and it feels a lot more like reality. It's
yeah. So this is an article that you wrote about the metaverse, and I think that here you're kind of a little bit cautious about it. You're saying it's a little bit not to get carried away. But it could be interesting in the near future. So that's a kind of balanced perspective there. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think the big question about things like the metaverse is the timeline, really. Because a lot of these things have been knocking about for a long time. This isn't a new concept. The virtual reality goggles aren't a new concept. And, to become mainstream, and by mainstream, I mean, used day to day all over the world, in kind of, social spaces or something like that is still going to take a long while, because, this is very demanding in terms of technology and connectivity, and a lot of people still don't have that.
Right.
If you're going to have to buy a new phone or a new pair of goggles or something like that are expensive to get it, then most people aren't going to do it.
I've been looking
that's a problem.
I've been looking into buying the Meta Quest 2. I think it's $600, maybe between $600 and $800, and and here, like you said, you need to have a very fast connection and a very high-spec computer, and so this is going to basically prevent a lot of people from using this technology. But it could eventually become more widely adopted, couldn't it?
Yeah, I would say, it will eventually become more widely adopted, and it will be adopted more quickly in countries or institutions where there's more money and for specialized activities and things like that. So it will start to integrate into education. The other thing that I see that's more likely to happen before that happens is actually the augmented reality side of things. Things like what the Google Glass was originally aiming at, where you integrate, the internet and virtual experience with your real experience. So you're wandering around a town and, with your virtual reality glasses on, your augmented reality glasses on, and you're gathering data from the internet as you're going, and maybe it's appearing on the screen or something on the sort of corner of your glasses, and you can access that information in that way. I can see that happening more realistically because the technology is easier to do. It could be powered by your phone, so you're you've got that connection, and it's, you know, it's more immediately useful as well.
There was something actually a while back, I posted to Facebook, I'm not sure if you saw this, so Google released an advert for their new Google Glasses that allowed you to see subtitles of what the other person is saying in a foreign language. Did you see that advertisement, Nick?
I didn't see that, no.
Okay, I posted it to Technology and Language Learning and Teaching. Let me just try and find that post now, 1 second. There's quite a bit of stuff going on here. It was quite a few weeks ago. Let me just see if I can find it. Nope, that's an advert for us here. Okay, I can't find it very quickly now. Maybe I'll have another look for it and try and bring it up a bit later. This one? No. This one here. Okay, got it. Okay, found it. So breaking down language barriers with augmented reality. This is what you were talking about, I think. And let's just play a little bit of this advert here.
My mother speaks Mandarin and I speak English, which is a strange thing.
他讲英文我可以听得懂，可是有时候我讲不来。
Forward a bit here.
You should be seeing what I'm saying, just transcribed for you in real time, kind of like subtitles for the world.
What we're working on is technology.
That's it, yeah. So you can see the look of shock on her face, like as he was speaking, you know, she could see the subtitles, as the guy said, subtitles for all the world. So this is the kind of thing that makes me think, coming back to the threats or opportunity thing, that this is going to negate the need to learn a language, to learn a foreign language, because we're going to have technology to make it transparent, you know, and we won't need to learn a foreign language. Do you think that could happen in the next, you know, 10, 20 years?
I think on the kind of what's the level? I think there's a level at which that will happen. You know, I think sort of, you know, like Google also produces sort of earpieces which can translate for you, don't they now? Which are also relatively cheap. You know, and on a practical level, like, you know, somebody going on holiday to a country for the first time, they've never been there before, they don't know the language, you know, something like that, you know, that can be really useful, and some, you know, in that way, and that will take away, you know, some element of sort of language teaching, I guess. But, you know, I always compare it a bit to sort of the difference between, you know, Guitar Hero and actually learning to play the guitar. You know, there are some people who are happy to sort of, you know, rock out having that kind of feeling as though they're able to play the guitar on a sort of piece of plastic with some buttons on. And there are some people who are going to actually want to play the guitar because, you know, they're producing music that expresses themselves. And I think it's a bit like that. There's a kind of utilitarian level at which, you know, these things are going to be really useful, you know, but there are still going to be people who want to actually do it, you know. You know, like, for example, you know, my wife is Venezuelan, and I can't imagine us having all of our communications just through, you know, some kind of translating earpiece, you know, or you know, messages that come up in text on our glasses. You know, there's more to language than just the words as well. You know, there's a whole bunch of, you know, intonation, you know, gesture, proximity, all of these sort of non-verbal things which are so important too. You know, that to really speak, to communicate in a language well, you need to learn all these things and be doing these things too.
Okay, just to close the loop on Metaverse then, Nick. So a Metaverse is a system that links a variety of different virtual reality experiences into kind of one cohesive universe. Would that be a correct definition of a Metaverse?
It links your identity through those different universes, I think.
Okay, so you have one avatar and you could go between Decentraland and whatever Facebook makes, whatever else.
And you would be the same person. You would retain your identity. You would retain your kind of bank balance, if you like. You would retain, you know, who you are throughout those.
Understood. Okay. We have another question from Raquel, just to wrap up the Metaverse conversation here. She says, would the Metaverse become more affordable if we have, if we use something like Google Cardboard, which I think was the little cardboard box that Google made that gives you kind of this augmented reality or virtual reality experience for a very, very low price point. Have you seen Google Cardboard, Nick?
Yeah, Google Cardboard is basically a virtual headset that you put your phone into to experience it through your phone. And I think, you know, that's a step towards it. And, you know, and I think that I think cardboard is nice, but it doesn't have, I don't think it has the degree of interaction that you can have with a kind of a high spec virtual reality headset, because that also comes with, like things like hand controllers, the ability to move about. What you can experience through your phone on Google Cardboard is relatively basic. It's basically visual and auditory,
Yeah,
so
I think
there are some limitations for that.
Raquel is emphasizing the fact that it's affordable, which is true. It's a trade-off, right? It's more affordable, but it's not quite as advanced as the Meta Quest 2, for example. Yeah, it's a simple, fun, and affordable way. Copying Google's sales copy here. Yeah. Okay.
And of course, it's using technology that you already have, which again, makes these things much more likely to happen.
Okay. Someone has mentioned OpenSim, which is something that I haven't heard of before. Doris Molero has mentioned OpenSim. Are you familiar with OpenSim at all, Nick?
Yeah, I'm a bit familiar with it. Yeah,
Anything,
haven't used it a lot, but
okay.
But it's basically, it's something a bit more, I guess, more like Second Life. But you can build within it yourself, and it's open for anyone to build anything. That's sort of my understanding of it.
Okay. All right, I just want to make a quick note on the time here. We've been talking for just about an hour. I had originally 10 questions planned. I think I'd like to finish off, just because I'm a little bit OCD and I want to answer every question, but we'll kind of answer the last 4 questions in a kind of very nominal way, and then we'll open up the floor for questions from the audience. Okay. So let's go on to question 7. What is your opinion of AR, VR, and do you think it will help or hinder language learning? I think we've pretty much discussed this already, haven't we? So we can move on to this. Yeah. Okay. Laptop, tablet, or smartphone, which is the best device for language teachers and learners? Again, it depends what you mean by best, but do you have a preference, Nick, at all?
Probably laptop. Or a desktop, just because, or if you, laptops and tablets are becoming more and more the same thing now, that you can just sort of put your tablet down onto a keyboard, But the big factor really is screen size, really to be able to teach, and you need to be able to manipulate a lot of different things, and the screen size really helps with that. Multiple screens helps that much more, but.
Yeah, I think I agree, because the laptop has a keyboard, and that's very important for writing activities and for typing. Kind of Duolingo even requires you to have a keyboard, really, and any of those kind of sites that require you to listen and spell a word or listen and write a word, it's much easier to have a keyboard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on. So these are 2 more phrases here, just to give a quick comment on. So, no technology for technology's sake. Do you agree or disagree?
Yes, I agree and disagree. I don't think, if you're thinking of technology as it being, intrinsically motivating, it's not. Just doing something with technology and thinking it will motivate your students, it won't. But I think there is a case for teaching students how to use technology, because that technology is useful, and sort of learning language through that process of learning about technology. Even if it's only teaching someone how to do online banking or something like that, that's a very useful thing to be able to do. So there are cases that you can make. I'm going to do this lesson on teaching someone how to use technology because it will be useful in their life, and they'll need to do it in English.
So technology is not necessarily inherently motivational, but at the same time, it doesn't just have to be learning a language. It could be other life skills involved in using technology, but students need to know how to do those things. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, question 10. Again, this is kind of the same thing, but it's not the technology, but what you do with it. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I'd go for an agree with that. It's basically what you do with it.
Yeah. Okay.
You need to have some kind of goal for your students, and they need to be aware of that it's going to help them in some way.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I think what I'd like to do now is pretty much open up the floor for any final questions for Nick, and I'd like to thank Nick again for joining us. Thank you very much, Nick. It's been really fascinating conversation. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time, and it was not a disappointment at all. It was great. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, thank you. That's great. Good to hear. I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Yeah, so anyone in the audience, I mean, at this point, I can probably allow people to speak, I think. It's always good to give people a chance to speak. So if you have a question you'd like to ask Nik, or just a comment or anything at all about technology, language learning, anything you want to share with other people, just go ahead, raise your hand and I'll unmute you and you can speak there. Okay, anyone want to chime in at all? Might be everyone's too shy. No. Oh, no one's raising their hand at the minute, Nik. So that's probably no one has a question at this point.
They've probably been listening to too much of me as it is. There's a limit to how much Nik Peachey you can listen to, I think.
Does anyone have a question? They can type it in the chat, maybe. Anyone else? Any final comments or questions? Go ahead, type them in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. Otherwise, I guess we'll wrap up and I'll post this recording to TILTAL and you guys can enjoy it again.
There's a comment about blended and hybrid could be the way forward. No, I think blended, yes. I mean, I have some sort of reservations about hybrid learning or hybrid teaching, as I like to refer to it, in terms of what's happening these days. You know, a lot of teachers are being asked to teach some students who are in the classroom at the same time as they're teaching students who are online. You know, and I think that if you're giving a lecture, then that might be fine. But, you know, for communicative language teaching, I think that's a disaster, you know, trying to expect a teacher to kind of teach, you know, two different places at the same time and organize the interaction between those students. You know, you're giving neither of those groups of students are getting the best of you, you know, if you're splitting your attention between the two. And, you know, I realize that we've had to do it during the pandemic, but I don't think it's something that we should do long term, you know, and hopefully that's not something that will persist because, you know, I don't think it's in teachers' best interest or students. You know, it might be in the best interest of schools because they think they can make a bit more money out of it. But, you know, it's not the best, you know, value for students. It's not the best situation for teachers.
Oh, you're talking about hybrid, where you have to kind of transmit the lecture at the same time as giving a face-to-face lecture?
Yeah, although I think with a lecture it might work, but with communicative language teaching where you want to get students working together, you need it to be interactive. I think it's not a good, it doesn't produce a viable product.
Definitely, I agree with that. It's something that we were told that we'd have to do, and I didn't agree with it. So I ended up kind of using Google Classroom, and I recorded a 20-minute kind of summary of the class for the students to then respond to in their own time, rather than trying to do two things badly at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that question was from Meghar, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There might have been some comments that went to you, Nik, that I can't see because that one is not on my chat. So you might want to just scroll back briefly in your chat and see if any of the questions have come to you directly. Anything there?
I can't find anything in terms of questions.
Okay.
No, that's it for questions.
Okay, I think we should wrap up and I can go get some dinner and you can go and get some breakfast maybe, and we'll call it a day. I think. Thanks again, Nik, for joining us and everyone else.
Okay,
and
thank you.
Thanks a lot. Take care, Nik, and please everyone visit Nik's websites. Once again, the links are in the chat. If I can just find them up here. Peachey Publications is Nik's main website for purchasing books and things that he's written. Is that correct, Nik? Yes. Yeah,
that's my catalogue site there. Yeah, and there are some free apps there as well.
peacheypublications.com, and I think the other one was the Scoop It page. But yeah, and also his Telegram channel as well. So please check those out. Okay, thanks everyone. See you next time. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Bye bye. Goodbye.